What's up, YouTube? Flames back at it again with another video. Sorry, I was supposed to make this video day before, but it happens. But yeah, without further ado, we're gonna get into chapter 11 through chapter 20. I'm just gonna run through a little recap of everything that we learned. Probably gonna be doing these videos like every 10 chapters or so. Not exactly 10, but just whenever I feel like we need to kind of summarize everything. But yeah, so chapter 11 basically just went over on how the world, like, there was all the different descendants of Noah, and they all got spread around the earth. So all the different they tried to make a tower up to heaven, and their languages got dispersed and they got spread all across the earth. So all of Noah's descendants are basically everywhere. And since the whole world got reset and restarted with Noah's family. So yeah, and then it goes through like a lot of lineage, and goes through a lot of Shem's descendants, Terah's descendants, and then Abram, futurely called Abraham. God speaks to him in chapter 12. He tells him to make an altar, and there's a famine. So in the land that Abraham promised to, how like you'll hear people talking about like, oh yeah, that, like, people making fun of Jewish people, and they're like, oh yeah, this was promised to me this 3,000 years ago. They're referring to how God promised that the land of Judea, like how God promised that, or I don't know if it's Judea, but the land that God promised Abraham is what they're referring to when they're saying, oh, white people are like, oh, this was promised to you 3,000 years ago. Like, God made a covenant with Abraham, and that's what they're referring to on how that land is theirs, which it is, frankly. So yeah, Abraham went down to Egypt with his wife and said his wife is his sister, so they wouldn't kill him and take his wife. And Lot ends up going to Sodom, and he goes with his wife, who he lied to, being a sister, to Egypt, and they ended up, let's see, and going on towards, chapter 14. Yeah, so basically, eventually, like, since Abraham was blessed by God and his enemies were cursed, the Egyptians ended up taking the Pharaoh and stuff ended up, taking his wife to be their wife, but everybody got sick and she was never touched or anything, and ended up going back to Abraham because it was revealed that, she was his wife and they were cursed for even having her there. God promises Abraham to have a offspring. One, if you can count the dust of the earth, your offspring can also be counted. Wow. Chapter 14. And basically, so basically Abraham rescues Lot in chapter 14. In King's Valley, with all of his servants and everybody. And then this is what I was talking about earlier, the covenant. God made a covenant, chapter 15, made a covenant with Abraham. And he made a sacrifice and made the altar and made the covenant with God. And then chapter 16, it talks about how Abraham's wife Hagar could not, not Hagar, Sarai. Hagar is the servant. Sarai couldn't bear him a wife or bear him a child, so he had a child with his slave Hagar, who ended up birthing Ishmael, and then yeah, so basically Ishmael was born, and then chapter 17 it starts talking about, you know, the covenant, and how like God asked the Jewish people to be circumcised to know that they're of him. So that's where the circumcision came in. And God changes God changed Abram's name to Abraham, and he changed Sarai's name to Sarah. And God promises them that even though Abraham and his wife were like 90, 100 years old, and this was after, you know, people weren't living forever, this was like normal lifespan. And yeah, Abraham was 99 years old when he got circumcised. And 13 years after Ishmael was born. And then, yeah, eventually, hold on. So, and then chapter 18, basically is warning Lot and, you know, everything, and basically foreshadowing, and talking to Abraham on, like, God's talking to Abraham on what he should do to Sodom and Gomorrah, and Abraham's like, what if there's righteous people there? What if there's some good people that shouldn't get destroyed with everybody else? God's going down. He's like, there's not, like, basically saying there's damn near nobody, except for, you know, Abraham's nephew Lot. So, two angels came in Sodom in the evening and, you know, saved Lot, and then, but, and, you know, some of his family, and urged them to go, you know, and everything was burnt to crisp and turned to sulfur, due to the wickedness that we see today was happening back then. So, and God's like, run, don't look back. Whatever you do, don't look back. And then in chapter 19, it continues. God destroys Sodom. Sodom and Gomorrah, sulfur the fire from the Lord of heaven. Then he overthrew the cities and all the valley, and all the inhabitants of the cities were in the ground. But Lot's wife behind him looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. So she didn't trust in God, she didn't listen, she didn't turn back, and she got turned into a pillar of salt, which is there to this day. Salt's still there. This is a historically accurate event. Like, all of this, like, is backed by science, but you wouldn't know that. Same thing with the flood. They found seashells at the bottom of the Sahara Desert. Like, all this stuff that has happened is very, very real, and is scientifically backed and proven. So, and then what happened next is Lot's daughters raped him, without any really other way to put that, because they thought that they would never have kids. Pretty effed up. That's really crazy. But yeah, that's pretty much like the gist of, you know, obviously, you know, I didn't talk about everything, but that's kind of the gist of what has happened. And then, you know, chapter 21, we talked about the birth of Isaac. But yeah, that'll be it for today. I'm about to go make the next video, you know, chapter 22. But I appreciate y'all for watching. Love y'all. Peace.